Welcome back. Now, the final decision on a new minimum wage for workers in Nigeria has been further delayed after President Bola Tinubu says he needed to engage further now with state governors and the private sector to reach a consensus on what the wage should be. Minister of Information Mohammed Idris announced this at the end of the last cabinet meeting on Tuesday, June the 25th. Here's exactly what the minister said.
That memo was stepped down to enable Mr. President to consult further, especially with the state governors and the organized private sector, before he makes a presentation to the National Assembly, before an executive bill is presented to the National Assembly. So I want to state that on the new national minimum wage, Mr. President is going to consult further so that he can have an informed position, because the new national minimum wage, like I said, is not just an issue of the federal government. It affects the state governments, it affects the local governments, it also affects the organized private sector. And that is why it is called national minimum wage. It's not just an affair of the federal government. So, Mr. President is going to, he has studied the report and he's going to consult wider before a final submission is being made to the National Assembly.
Now, recall that at the last negotiation meeting over the national minimum wage, the federal government had reviewed its offer of 62,000 naira, while labor unions had also reduced their demand to 250,000 naira. And in May, the tripartite committee submitted its report to President Tinubu. So everyone had been waiting for the president's final pronouncement on the report before this latest development. Meanwhile, the 36 governors have actually advocated that each state be allowed to negotiate their own minimum wage with the labor unions. The governors made the demand in a 16-point communique issued on Thursday after the meeting of the Nigeria Governors Forum in Abuja. They've also promised to remain dedicated to the process and assured that better wages would result from the ongoing negotiation. Let's try to unpack all of this now. I'm being joined on the program by Amechi Asugbeni, who is a former Deputy National President of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Mr. Asugbeni, thank you very much for coming on the show. Let's start off with what the governors are saying. I mean, they're asking that that states be allowed now to negotiate their own minimum wage with workers in their state. What's your take on that?
That demand of the governors has been an ancient plan of the governors to have their way. And the intention of minimum wage has been to protect the interests of workers nationwide. Don't forget, the essence of having national minimum wage is to the extent that no employer would, by himself or by himself, decide wage outside what the law covers for the nation. And it goes a long way to tell you that when we talk about parity in pay, we are talking about equity in salary distribution. There are workers in the private sector that covers across more than 10 states in trying to derive operation in their sectors. So you have a construction company that have its headquarters in Abuja or Lagos, but they have operation in various states. So whereby states are allowed to make their own law for salary, it will also create disparity within the rank of a company. And that may negate the law that promotes equal work for equal pay, where a company has its workers in various states, and then the law of a state will compel you to pay a particular salary, and the law in another state compels such employer to pay a different salary. That on its own has its own disadvantage. So the consequence is more because some state government will choose even than the 30,000 we're earning. So the disadvantage is actually going to be seen as evil. And that is why we will not do otherwise than to promote a trial wage point for the nation.
I understand your point, but let's look at the other side of the argument. Would it be fair, for instance, to ask states, because you talked about parity of pay, but when you look at the cost of living and you look at the even inflation, internal inflation in the country, it's not the same across board. These states do not earn the same. The states, we obviously know that some states are richer, they get more money than others. Would it be fair now to apply the same wage for these states across board?
Of course, it is fair. In fact, a practical example is what the governors also earn as their own pay. The pay for governors is equal across the nation. Councillors, all the government office holders, they have parity in their payment across the nation. That they don't have problem.
I'm not too sure of that. I'm not too sure of that because I'm not so sure that the commissioner in Sokoto State earns the same as what a commissioner in Lagos State earns.
Yes, they have equity in that their plan. So in the case of what they earn, they don't have problem with that. But workers, they want to decide what we earn. Whereas the law has decided what they earn centrally. And then how can you cannot, they say what is good for the Gentiles is also good for the Jews. So I believe the wisdom behind minimum wage is to avoid what the governors are asking now. And that is to say it has to be resisted. Because issue of ability to pay has to do with paying beyond minimum wage, not the minimum wage. Minimum wage is the least pay. So some states can go above it. That is what we should allow states to decide. Deciding above minimum wage can be allowed by state to take that step. But coming to decide lower than the minimum wage or to be creating state minimum wage, that will create confusion in every sector. And it's not going to be easy to practice. So they are saying it just like Mr. President removed subsidy and now we are facing the consequence. So if you also dance to that their request, the consequence will also fall heavily on private sector. Because in that case, anytime a private sector is going to do a job in any state, you start negotiating new wage with your union and vis-a-vis the law of the state.
Can I ask you this? Sorry to interject, but let me ask you this. The current minimum wage in the country today is 30,000 naira. And you know for sure that quite a number of states are not able to pay the 30,000 naira. They've not been paying, even since the law was passed about 4 years ago. That's in 2019. They've not been able to pay. They are not paying. So if the states now are saying, look, it's better we negotiate this wage ourselves rather than have a national minimum wage, doesn't it make sense? Because whatever is negotiated now, if they were not able to pay 30,000, how are you sure that they would be able to comply with whatever would eventually be agreed on? So wouldn't it make better sense for these states, to decide how much they are able to pay, negotiate with the workers in their states how much they are able to pay based on their financial capacity?
There are some of the requests these people put on the table and they become mockery to our nation. When state government tells you they cannot pay 30,000 and they should be allowed to decide wage, these are people that either have little or no knowledge of the intent of wage. Wage is not at the discretion of any governor to award. Wage is a legitimate entitlement to a worker. And that is to tell you that if you cannot pay 30,000 and you are allowed to decide that wage, you may eventually decide to pay 15,000. And can that be called a wage? 15,000 at this junction in this country should be looking like a daily pay. You and I know that even those people that operate skill work, like Mercy, Carpenter, and all the rest, their daily pay in Nigeria today is 10,000 per day if they must offer service to any worker. These are the same workers that you cannot pay 30,000 and they will invite a plumber to come and repair anything in their house and they will be looking for 7,000 to 10,000 to pay a plumber. So there's no way, because maintenance of their welfare is being catered by the worker. When a worker is given responsibility that ought to be the duty of government, such worker must certainly demand for a fair wage. So 30,000 cannot drive home any worker. Be you a cleaner, be you a security guard in the workplace, 30,000 is not a wage. So we should rather be talking about what must state do to improve their revenue in order to cover for a fair wage, not to continue this lamentation of our lack ability to pay what is even undermining. Because when we talk of a cleaner, whom I expect should be earning the lowest, this cleaner is a mother, this cleaner is an auntie, this cleaner is a wife. So we are talking about men and women of responsibility, responsible people who eventually have families that they will cater for. So when we talk of wage, we are talking about Nigeria economy, because these are people. The other day, I traveled the route of Asaba to Lagos, that is, to be precise, this week, Monday. And then I got to a place to get myself banana granite. I was told that they cannot sell because road users were few because of the stay at home in the East. You can imagine the consequence of that on the people. So I see this as a big challenge that we will certainly work to review. And I don't believe that workers should be treated in this.
So what is the way out now? Because the governors are saying that they won't be able to pay. I mean, they've said that they won't be able to even pay the 60,000 naira. That's what they said the other time. And now they're saying, look, allow us negotiate our own wage. What then is the way out? How can all of this be resolved?
The way out, from my own perspective, is that we must promote good governance by allowing our governor in question to begin to look at the internal generating revenue source, to know that production is part of governance. Because if we don't do anything to address the issue of local production, this complaint will continue. We will continue to ask questions of governors that have failed to perform their duty, and we are making these excuses look legitimate, and it's helping them to drive their argument. You can see the meeting they are having with the president. The president intends to offer Nigerians a better wage as a way of at least curing I call it the interim hardship that we are facing. But whereby these people continue to say we cannot pay, does that solve the problem of we cannot also, because you talk about ability of an employer, talk about ability of a worker to also promote services for his own family. You lack ability to pay. I also lack ability to afford for my family. And what must I do? A worker has been given responsibility to perform that duty, meaning you have no other secondary job. And if that is your primary duty, my primary duty should afford me at least feeding. If I have 2 children, they must go to school. Let it even be public school. They must, their uniform and their books and everything, including their meal, must be catered for. 30,000 cannot do that for any worker. 60,000 cannot do that for any worker in this country. You all know when 30,000 was put to operation, bag of rice was less than 30,000. It means that with 30,000, you can get yourself rice, you can get yourself yam, gari, and all this other food stuff in your house. Today, 60,000 cannot even get you 1 bag of rice. And you want to make that a monthly wage? Because whether we like it or not, feeding is constant. So even mad people look for food on the street. How much more a responsible man who has been given duty to obey the law, obey traffic, and comply to the rules and regulations of the country. And you want that person to earn less than a wage that can care for his family? How would they think right? And then tomorrow you tell me people are disobeying government rules and regulation and policy. Because when you don't feed well, you don't think well. So I think Nigerian welfare must be actually considered as a priority in governance. Governors must be caused to change that thought. They are selfish in this. In the manner they are going with minimum wage. They are too selfish. They are treating minimum wage as a secondary matter in governance. which is very poor. If they are measuring their wage with productivity, no governor will speak less important to wage issue. And it's high time we began to promote salary as a legitimate motivating factor to enable and enhance production, because it's actually a painful thing that in this country we are not utilizing the workforce to enhance production. Very poor.
All right, Amechi Asogwini, former Deputy President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, thank you very much for coming on the program. Thanks for your time.
God bless you. You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Don't go away. Opinions are free. Facts are sacred. But truth is universal. How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
When you go into public office, you must be ready to answer to the people.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians are saying in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, and use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.